Secret friends, unite!
Welcome to the Secret Friends Unite podcast, episode 527. This is your guide to the geek side, and I'm Todd Oxtra, and we're going to be talking about week 2 of the Summer of Superman, but I am joined with Charlie Carden.
You are not joined with me. Are we in some kind of weird cult or something? Mother Shabubu?
Joined with the power of the internet.
Oh my goodness, that is trying. Yeah, we're gonna have a good show talking about Superman 2. And we were talking in the pre-roll. I was 4 years old when this came out. It was the same time as The Empire Strikes Back. I couldn't tell you. I saw this movie in the theater. It was probably several years later, and I definitely had rosy-colored glasses watching it. This time it had been a while, but it's not like I had
Rosie O'Donnell colored glasses. Yes,
I don't know. It's kind of Rosie O'Donnell's the point. She kind of looks like Perry White, but I digress. We're gonna have a fun time and news as well. And we'll watch a bunch of fun stuff. But let's get into it as we always do by talking about the very fine folks over at our Secret Friends Unite Patreon squad. If you visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, you can watch my fingers, get exclusive shows, early shows, ad-free shows, awesome Discord benefits watch my other hand, free for 7 days, 50% off your first month, and then I think I just ran out of stuff, as low as $2 a month to stay on board. My goodness, a lot of entertainment for $2 a month. These folks know what's going on. My good buddy, Derek Trevelyan, the figure dude, Francie, who does my wife's hair. Francie, new episode of Bad Trip to the Movies with the Cartons coming out next weekend, or maybe the weekend after that, but it's going to be a good one. It's going to be one I've wanted to do for a long time, so set your timer. Luke Lord, Mr. Xbox Expansion Pass, and my Uncle Tim down there in South Haven, Michigan. Also John Sedorf, Brendan Myers, Corey in HD, Matthew Keel, my buddy, Kurt Krug, who is our talent wrangler, our friend Tanya Lee, Chipotle Bear, Famous Seamus, Cam the Movie Man, Jay Newport 007, and I believe the last stop on our We're Giving You Your SFU Superpower is Prozac Man, aka Darth Prozac. So and tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I think we did Jay Newport.
We already did, Charlie. Right? Yep, okay, we already did. So he's blessed. He doesn't get the double power.
Right. And did we already do Prozac Man? Why do I feel we already talked about Prozac?
We talked about drugs.
So we're done. We're done.
Yes.
Sorry. So
nobody gets a second mutation.
You are now fully fleshed out regular Patreons. But to wrap it up, we always love to give homage to our good friends, the Nias family of the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry. Thank you. And thank you all of you for supporting us. Patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. Free for a week. Half off your first month, and then stay on board for as little as $2 a month. All right, set the stage. 1975.
Oh my goodness! Well, yes, we got this covered, Charlie, and yes. I picked this one out. I was torn between two covers this week, so I originally had Avengers
covers. It's a song.
227. Yes,
I saw
Avengers 227. I took it away because it did have some funny bits. I'm like, well, this is a little goofy, but I picked something that obviously is far superior, which is Marvel Premiere number 27, coming out September 1975. Satana or Satana,
she's got
the Devil's Daughter.
Hold on, is she a black magic woman?
She might be, but for the first time in her own shocking full color series, we get a crowd hanging out at a bonfire, and she's in the middle of it. It says, "Burn her, destroy the spawn of Satan," and it's titled Death Cry. And one guy looks like a pilgrim, but the rest of the people look like they're wearing regular suits. So I'm not sure if this is a throwback or modern times, and a guy just liked the era of pilgrimage and the funky hats.
I mean, it was the 70s and people wore a lot of different kind of stuff. So I get it. I read something, and maybe this is true, maybe it's not, but like fallacies throughout history, witches being burned at the stake was never really a thing. It was kind of made up. They drowned them because you know what? It's probably less mess because you could drown them and then you could burn them and you don't have to listen to them scream twice. I don't know. But yeah, so this is a Satana. So that's not that's the devil's daughter, but it's not. I'm getting it. But the son of Satan is Damien Hellstrom. So this is his sister.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, she's not
I
really.
don't
She's
know.
not really
She doesn't have
anymore.
she doesn't have a secondary name. It's not Satana Hellstrom.
Yeah.
So, you know, the devil could have many children. It could be a spawn of it. It doesn't give much about her actual origin. If there truly was, this was her, or I don't think this was her origin story. But she did show up. So she must have been introduced in another book previously.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know.
And Marvel Premiere, that was a great book that ran for a long time. And by the name of it, you would kind of think like, oh, we're introducing somebody new every week, but that would be impossible. But I think it was really a hotbed to introduce new characters throughout its run, because it ran. I'm thinking of Marvel Fanfare. Marvel Fanfare was like a prestige format.
Premiere was the weird one. It had sometimes had movie adaptations. Sometimes Marvel Premiere had like a run of a character for like 6 issues. Yeah, it introduced like 3D Man, I believe.
Yes,
some really weird stuff. Now, when I looked at this book, essentially Satana is trying to save a woman who is being burned at the stake for being a witch. Her name is Deborah Hirsch. The powers were emanating from Chandler, California. Apparently, it's the mystical place.
Hold on. Let me stop you now. That would be Deborah in Chandelier, California. I mean, come on.
Oh, got it.
Talk about your pronunciation. You got to enunciate.
Deborah, yes. But apparently Morbius was in this book.
Really?
There was a couple other characters, like antagonists were Demon Fire, Justin Catabolic, Poison Lark, and numerous unnamed others.
Poison Lark?
So,
and the big sting here is that this says the devil's daughter. I was married to the devil's daughter. Did not look like that. Kind of false advertising. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I would be married to the devil's daughter if it looked like this chick. It kind of looks like she has horns though, so maybe not. I'm not sure. But yeah, what's her status with in Marvel these days?
I couldn't tell you. Essentially at this point. But the fun part about this book, Chris or Charlie, guess who wrote it?
Was it Tom DeFalco? J.M. Demetrius.
No, it's Chris Claremont. That's why I said Chris. No. Chris Claremont wrote this. So this would have been early before he went to X-Men. And the penciler, it says The Tribe. That's what it's called, The Tribe. I looked up The Tribe, and it's also pseudonyms are Tony DiZuniga or Sonny Trinidad. So it was a person who it's an informal name attributed to a team of inkers that work for Marvel Comics. And Tony DiZuniga is one of the members of the Tribe. So basically it was just like a pool of
So it's kind of like
people.
I'll give you a parallel. It sounds like there was a house band at Motown back in the class when it was on West Grand Boulevard in Detroit, the Funk Brothers. They are the inker Funk Brothers. That's what it sounds like to me. I like
Funk Soul Brothers. Sure. Check it out now.
Talk about that as well. So anyway, so quite an image. I will tell you again, rip off because my ex-wife did not look like this woman. And this is a story that Madam Web told us once. So without a doubt, this was based on real events. This is something that happened to her even at the tender age of 75. She is out there at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, waiting to give us the top scoops. Let's go for it.
Now it's time for Madam Web's rumors and news. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Madam Web. Madam Web, we rarely talk about your parents. I know it's a little difficult. While you weren't the devil's daughter, you were the daughter of the founders of Denny's. So at this point, you know what?
Again,
it's not too bad. But unfortunately, because of you didn't follow your dad's dreams of taking over the Denny's franchise, he wrote you out of the will, and you no longer eat there. You only go to IHOP.
Oh my God! Yeah, last time I ate at Denny's, I can think of. We went there for the Solo Star Wars movie because there were trading cards or something. Food poisoning. That was like 7-8 years ago. Bye. And April has horror stories about Denny's as well, so it is boycotted by the gardens without a doubt. Well, we woke up to some sad news yesterday. An absolute legend in the field of not only comics but also prose has left us after a long illness. We were talking about Peter David. creator of comics such as Spider-Man 2099, and with very long and exciting runs on The Incredible Hulk in the 80s and 90s, and the guy who gave Aquaman the hook for a hand, and created the first prose only crew of a starship in Star Trek with Star Trek New Frontier in 1997, which is a series that I followed very closely. Was a very, very big fan of that. But we've known, that he was ill for a long time. Todd, you met him back in, I'm going to say 2017 at a show there in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'd have to remember what it was, and I did an impromptu interview with him. Very nice guy. I've always been a fan of his. He was such a prolific writer of The Incredible Hulk. Did so much things with that character. I mean, talk about one of the longest runs. I mean, I think he did that book for about 150 issues.
It was like Claremont. Well, not quite, but almost like Claremont was on X-Men.
Yeah,
who did it for many, and did so many important things.
Absolutely. And it was just, I was saying, I was talking to him. I said, hey, I'd love to do an interview with you eventually, but I'm not prepared. He goes, what are you doing right now? I'm like, well, I guess I'm interviewing you. So very clunky interview. I was totally unprepared, but it was so great to just talk to him. I had the phone on him and I was just asking him questions. So we will make sure that gets out there again so people can listen to it. But I mean, we talk about his mark on comic books, like you mentioned, what he did for Star Trek. You were a big fan of his work there. He also co-created a series with Bill Mumy on Nickelodeon called Space Cases. And he wrote on Babylon 5. I mean, he created a ton of characters throughout his time and just never stopped loving what he did. And his voice was not someone that sounded of his age. He always sounded like he could write characters of different, backgrounds. He wrote comedy, he wrote serious stuff. So such a talented guy. And he's been in ill health for many, many years.
Yeah, absolutely.
GoFundMe, and his wife, just a gem, just always keep people up to date on his journey. And it's such a sad thing because, like a lot of comic book writers, artists, people in the industry, they aren't taken care of by the companies that, they work so hard for. They're not given life insurance, no benefits. So I was glad I was able to help them out. But, these people need to be done better by the people that they worked for.
Right. No, I totally agree. So, a huge loss to the community, social media, of all the different people that we follow and that we know as collaborators, just outpouring with their love and affection for his work. So he will sorely be missed. So R.I.P. Rest in power, Peter David. All right. Well, back in a small town in Maine where you got I always say to April because she's a big Stephen King fan, where you always have a sheriff and a preacher. We are going back to Derry, Maine, which is the home of It, which has been since the book from the 70s, I believe. One of his earlier books, maybe the early 80s, was a miniseries in 1990 starring Tim Curry as the terrifying horror clown Pennywise, and then popularized within the last decade in 2 films by Skarsgård, taking over the role and giving us 2 what I thought were 2 absolutely terrific films. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Novel first published in 1986. So, but we're getting a miniseries, which is going to be on Max, I'm assuming, because they own the property
very soon.
And it's going to be coming out pretty quickly. Max, which is transitioning back to HBO Max, for not a lot of great reasons, but we're getting the same thing. We get in a group of kids, 1 female and 1 black kid, and everybody else is a white boy. But it's Maine. So what exactly do you think is going to be going on? But this is a little bit more of the origins of the Pennywise, basically spirit or poltergeist, if you will. Now, as I recall, just off the top of my head, Pennywise exists on a clock of 27 years. He will reappear, terrorize for a period of time, and then disappear again. Now, at the end of It, Chapter 2, which again, it came out several years ago, so I don't. If you missed watching it, I'm not even going to get into it. But yes, again, how can you truly destroy that kind of evil? But again, that's kind of what it looked like. But those films came out in 2017 and 2019. Bill Skarsgård, who was Pennywise, is again involved in this project, but we don't know a ton. And we're getting this from Andy Muschietti is who made the films, is amongst the series writers. And we are getting this. I'm skimming for a date, and I don't see one. Do you see a date? Must be soon.
Question. Looking. We should really put this down.
Premiered this fall, exact release date TBA. So there we go.
Okay, excellent.
9 episodes. So Todd, you are up to. You obviously you saw both films.
Yes,
I assume.
absolutely.
Okay.
I've seen the miniseries.
Yeah,
I've always enjoyed it. Now, this one is a little interesting because it's going to be 3 seasons, and each season will be taking a place in a different time era. So the first season will be set in 1962. Then the interesting part is season 2 will be in 1935, and then season 3 will be 1908, which is weird. They say there is a reason why the story is told backwards. So we will probably get bits and pieces of Pennywise's origin from each era, which will then probably, hopefully it'll be like, were we right? Were they right? This is how his origin came to be, and maybe this is truly how it all came, and Pennywise is finally devolved, or there's a reason why we're ending in 1908. Is that when his first appearance was actually documented, and then before that it was just a boogeyman and no one really, because before that would have been 18, let's do the math, Charlie, 1891, I believe.
27. Yeah, very good. Do remember that in the first film, when we're watching the kids in the 80s, that they do, what they always do in things like, well, let's go to the town archives and look at old newspapers. And they saw like circus comes to town and 3 kids disappear. And then you see in the background, Pennywise is like hiding in the shadows behind something or other. You know what I mean? So we'll dial it backwards and you'll get chunk. And then maybe the end of that last season will jump forward in some fashion or something like that. But because again, it makes sense. The films were told from the past becomes the present, and then you had to dial it all the way backwards. So I'm fired up to see this. This will be nice for fall. I'm assuming if it says fall, we're talking spooky season, because that makes the most sense.
I've got to assume,
So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So HBO Max, their prestige horror for the fall. So I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, because once, obviously, Last of Us, we'll talk about that wrapped up this week. So then if they're going to have like a prestige show every, just no overlap, they will have it. Yeah. So then there'll be something. And then when that wraps up, maybe another thing. And then it goes to.
Yeah. And again, I'm sure that stuff may be out there. We're just not really connecting the dots. So, well, cool. All right. Well, Todd, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has seen some tough times. I was having this conversation with my son-in-law over the weekend because we were up with family about movies and Deadpool and Wolverine, beautiful bright spots since post-Endgame, but the rest of it has been definitely some highs and lows. So the question is, judging by this next story, is the MCU, are the people at Disney waking up and smelling the coffee? Talk to me about it.
Well, we just got a notification that the 2 of the biggest and most anticipated Marvel movies have been moved out essentially 6 months.
Right.
So rather than summer releases, we are getting, call it fall-ish, Christmas time-ish.
Probably not. Yeah. Now, do keep in mind all 3 of the last the trilogy of Star Wars, which, whether you liked them or not, they were very successful. All came out at that time frame. Those were all holiday movies. Wicked, which came out, was incredibly successful. That the sequel to that comes out same time frame, will also be very successful. So it's very documented.
We haven't had a Marvel movie come out later than August, right, or September?
It seems like it's always February, March, May, July, or August, like you said, but nothing in fourth quarter. Nothing in fourth quarter.
Okay.
I would definitely say.
Yeah. So Doomsday is now coming out December 2026. So that is, once again, that is coming out about 7 months later. And then Avengers Secret Wars is coming out December 2027. So rather than being the kickoff movie of those years, now they're moving out, which is interesting because we got the fanfare of the introductions of the chairs with names. And then all of a sudden, I mean, we're talking about 2 months later. We need now an additional 7 months when, I don't know what that means.
again, the movies are certainly the first film is in production, so it's being filmed. It's twofold, my analysis of that. Number one, staying in those same two time frames puts it nose to nose with Star Wars films that we know are coming out. So get them out of the way. Don't take, because we got Mando and Greggy coming out next summer, and then you got Ryan Gosling, superstar pilot guy, coming out the following summer. So you knock that out. And two, I think even they know that by rushing to be all things to all people and having a screen on them at all times means visually things suffer, and then on the writing side things have suffered. So more script refinements, more time could equal more success. What is that? It's like the underpants gnomes, right? Socks plus dryer equals profit. I don't know.
Something profit. Yeah.
Exactly.
The only issue is with Marvel, though, with everything having to connect, and then this potentially could hurt other films, because Spider-Man. Now the Spider-Man film, which was supposed to come out after Doomsday, is now coming out before it. Right. So you can't have something impact Spider-Man. So now that team is now probably going to have to rewrite the script, do something to accommodate for it, because you can't have like, oh my God, I can't believe I survived the Doomsday. Now he's like, now they won't even say the word Doom. You have to take everything out of that Doom, because
I survived Kang's Day. We're going back to that.
Yeah, and anybody he might have interacted with or something from it essentially becomes you have to write that out. And what does that mean to his story? Like, did he have any big moments within Doom? Was he going to have any big moments in Doomsday, which would have altered his story? So I do worry that that's what always happens when you shuffle these films in Marvel, and they're so dependent that essentially now you've given your problems to someone else, because it's like, you get more time, but thanks for us, we got less time to adapt for this. So in a year,
and less time to accommodate. So you're right. This could yank the rug out from under, because that Spider-Man film is not in actual production. It's not filming currently. So, but I mean,
which mean this gets moved out too. Maybe Spider-Man gets moved out too, which pisses off Sony, of course. And it's like, what are you doing? So are you going to then move Spider-Man into the
2027
May? For there. And it is kind of interesting. Obviously, they want to do quality over quantity. So if there truly was something wrong with the films, or they notice like, hey, we need more time, I'm glad they're giving them the time.
Yes, that's how I'm feeling. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I'd heard something else too. There's a lot of like untitled films that were on their schedule that now have been moved out or removed totally. So instead of an unnamed Marvel movie, now it's an unnamed Disney movie, which is just like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty cut and dry example of Disney trying to bite off more than they can chew. You know what I mean? They think they own the world by putting like, we're going to create anticipation for a project that's 3 years from now that they can't manage, or they don't really accommodate for the time that is going to get knocked out because things change and views sour. And I mean, the good news is Disney's not going to run out of money. The banks will still give them money, and they still print money with movies like Lilo and Stitch, which was out this weekend and doing very well. They're going to be okay. I know that unless I, die suddenly, in which case watching a Marvel movie is not my biggest concern, I will still be here and I will still go see it. When it comes out is when it comes out. I would just like it to be longer wait and a better film than a quick rush and something that sucks, that doesn't help Marvel recover, because Marvel needs, they need a big hit within the interconnectivity MCU timeline that is not Deadpool, which was a funny one-off. You know what I mean?
Maybe there's a point where we stop getting studios telling us way too much stuff in advance.
Yeah.
Because does it really ever help them?
I mean, they clearly still think it does, because again, it's buzz. It's like, people are talking about Disney, people are talking about Marvel. There's palpable excitement, but then the double-edged sword is a situation like this where they're like, we're not going to be able to deliver it, but still keep watching our shit on Disney Plus, please. Yeah, keep rewatching our movies and enjoying them, which people still do. But it's hard to really ramp up the ongoing excitement if it's a lot of promises not kept. So,
quite honestly, I don't think the mainstream people remember any of this stuff. Like, they mentioned that thing. Oh, it's only like the small geekdom that follows this
Yeah.
stuff like we do that actually will remember this. So it's like, did it serve anyone anything except for forcing people into a date?
Yeah, and again, it's the John Q moviegoer, people outside of our world that made the MCU the gajillion-dollar franchise. It's not us and just us. So while we may be pissed, people out there in the real world won't care. They'll go see the movie when it comes out, and it stands a better chance of keeping things moving if it's better than if they rush it out. So anyway, we will continue to opine on this as time goes by. But moving on, Todd, you finally finished Andor. You took your sweet time. And we're going to talk about that over in the Geek Easy. Peak Star Wars for me. I cannot absolutely imagine how great it was. But look, Ryan Reynolds is chiming in, talking about how he thinks, well, now we're moving into the next phase where Star Wars needs to be for actual grown-ups, which is the people who watch it. So yes, Deadpool Star thinks Star Wars could stand to do more mature things, but not the crass and vulgar kind. I agree. I don't think we need to have a lot of effing and jeffing in Star Wars. We don't need Star Wars boobs. We don't need the sexy romp, which is what Todd said in his notes here. But Andor has shown us, and again, Todd, I'm sure you'll agree, and we'll expand on it more in the next section, has shown us that you can have a gripping drama, white knuckles, sneak in a little Star Wars here, a little Star Wars there, and have it not be space wizards and big explosions all the time and dumb fun. You can have something that's really meaningful, that frankly is very relevant to what is happening in the world right now. Absolutely. So yeah, Ryan Reynolds is right. I'm glad he didn't say, hey, we need to, have a Deadpool-like character in Star Wars. He didn't go that route, because that would not meet with the approval of any serious fan. But what do you think? So, I mean, you've seen Andor. We all know a year ago how fired up we were for the Acolyte and how that fire very quickly went out when it sucked. It's funny, a content creator who I listen to, and I won't drop any names, is a very big fan of the Acolyte and not a fan of Ahsoka. Like he transposes them as being the Acolyte is great and Ahsoka not so much. I can kind of see where he's coming from with Ahsoka, because it doesn't really stand on its own. But the Acolyte didn't really stand for anything. But Andor, to me, nailed everything. It absolutely nailed everything. So anyway, what do you think?
So this is an interesting one, because Star Wars is, I believe, a property that can have very high-end things that we've seen with Andor now in Rogue One. And then we've also seen the silly, goofy, like, it's the Jedi kids on Disney Plus, and
young Jedi Adventures,
and
which is
Legos and Lego video games, and has the amusement park where you can have like the cutesy stuff. And Star Wars always had that with like the Ewoks, and it can be in both places. Now the question becomes, what does Disney want Star Wars to do? That's a good question. Does it want it to be all things to everyone, or are they like, well, if we do this type of R-rated property, will it deliver on what we want financially? I don't know the results of Andor.
That's true.
And did it deliver what Disney wanted?
Did it give them the minutes? Is it the minutes that they needed?
Even the minutes, it's like, it's hard because it's a little bit, you're going to probably not get as many eyes on it just because you're limiting the audience. So, but you are maybe bringing in people that would not have grown tired of Star Wars. And it's kind of, like you said, a lot of these things feel like they're all trying to do the same thing, which is just, find the big bad, bring in some more enemies, some cool looking characters, and it essentially just doesn't deliver for a larger or a more mature audience or critically. So I think we could do something like this. I think it could be more along lines of smaller releases, do something more in line with what they do with Andor. I don't know how much it costs compared to other shows, but I think there is a great place to do this in Star Wars. It just depends on who's going to give him pitch. And it's funny that Ryan Reynolds is the one to say this, because I'm like, it's not like he's done a lot of things lately that have been like highbrow R-rated, that he would be the one that I would look for his wisdom versus maybe, like Jason Sudeikis, who does comedy, or does this, or Bill Hader, who does comedy, but he also does very serious things. So
Barry, Bill Hader.
Is this like his secret pitch to say, I want to do something, Disney, hire me, and I got a pitch?
Yeah. Hopefully he doesn't bring the same serious chaps we saw in Green Lantern.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
he's already in with the Disney family now with Deadpool, but
Yeah.
which again, he mentions like not crass or vulgar. And if Ryan Reynolds can pull off as a writer and, someone who does a lot of stuff, go a different route, do that transition to maybe a little more serious, or why not give him a chance? I'm all for it. It gets him out of the headlines with his wife and that lawsuit.
Oh, good Lord. Well,
Yes.
speaking of mature content, now, Todd, I know this is not a favorite character of yours, the Punisher over in Marvel Comics. You've always just said he's kind of generic. He's a dude with guns. So what? And I can't necessarily disagree with you. I know that he's a lot of people may or may not know he's originally a Spider-Man character, ASM 129 from 1974. I know that back before we had Marvel Unlimited, there was a great reprint series called Marvel Tales, which reprinted Spider-Man titles. And so they did a couple of years of just Spider-Man and Punisher stories. So I read all those growing up. So I developed sort of an affinity for the character, but as you said, it gets to be a bit one note because he's just a dude killing people all the time. And where do you go with that? You know what I mean? He doesn't have any morals except for he likes to kill bad guys, as opposed to Captain America, whose morals are, he doesn't kill, or at least not in the comics. In the movies, he kills all the time, indiscriminately. But he has been, they say he's been off the board for a couple of years. I didn't know that. But I mean, that's kind of less significant than like when the Fantastic Four didn't have a title for a couple of years because they were the very first, modern age Marvel comic. But he's back in a issue. It's a 5-issue miniseries, which is Todd and I have talked about many times, is our very favorite kind of comic because it's give you a little, and if it's great, do it again. If it sucks, it doesn't exist anymore. Poof. It doesn't then get canceled after 7 issues. But this is called Red Band from Ben Percy, Wolverine. So somebody who writes violent stuff. And artist Julius Onta, Iron Man, not familiar with his work. When we last saw Frank a couple of years ago, he took control of the Hand Ninja cult, learned his wife was alive, and wanted a divorce. Ouch! That's more painful than knowing she was dead, or is it? And was later sent to Weird World. Now I feel like I know because didn't he then become the Ghost, the Ghost Rider?
Well, someone else took over for him in the comics, became another character who basically had a very similar mission as Frank did, but this is the story of him coming back, and the reason it's called Red Band is if you're familiar with Red Band trailers. What does that mean, Charlie? Vulgarity and gore, sexy times.
Yes, exactly. I don't know that the Punisher has much of a reputation for sexy time, but who knows? But yeah, you can expect. And again, he had a great. His real claim to fame was in the 80s. It was a series by, was it Frank Miller and Michael Zeck? I don't know who wrote it, but he has that very famous cover of him leaning up against the wall with the 2 guns shooting and like.
Yeah, they're using that again. It looks like a homage to Zeck's here. We've got some different covers for this. And this will be polybagged, and basically it will be so kids can't get it.
I've seen that. I'm in and out of comic shops all the time, as you know, as I travel for work, and I have seen that on racks recently, that they do have something bagged that literally says explicit content, not for younger readers. And it's got a band across, so I don't know if that means it's blocking something, but yeah, even just, from the couple of panels that are here, and yeah, you're right, in the lower right-hand corner, you do have an homage. That wasn't the illustration I was thinking of, but that is an homage to Mike Zeck. It actually looks exactly the same. Todd, I expect this is probably not up your alleyway, something that you'd want to have a look at.
Well, so what I don't really care about, I didn't care about. He does a good job in the show. The character of the Punisher on the show is kind of like, yep, that's the Punisher. It doesn't really surprise you. In the comics, though, when he's handled well, there's been some awesome Punisher comics, and lately they've been doing some weird things with the Punisher. Like they made him basically he became the Spirit of Vengeance, Ghost Rider. Remember when we read that book? Yes, so they have done some really. So I like it when you mix Punisher in with some of the weird stuff in the Marvel universe, because it basically takes him out of just being a kind of a stereotype, kind of like vigilante, where he was the first. Yeah. He was first, but it's like I think Punisher was part of like a Dirty Harry that basically inspiration. What is it? The Charles Bronson character.
Death Wish.
What's the movie?
Yeah,
Death Wish. So I felt like a lot of that was kind of like they were feeding into each other. And obviously we know that many people have appropriated Punisher in certain areas, and it just and Marvel hates that, and they want to regroup him into a certain way. So I don't want to make, bring him up because he's a killer. But I do appreciate the new approach to him in the Daredevil series that we just got. So I like it there. I don't want a full Punisher series. I want him to be pulsed in as needed.
It is,
as a little bit of spice.
They're doing a Marvel Television one shot of him, which is exactly correct. Give him a little adventure, and then he goes back into rotation and he pops up when he needs to. So, well, that's cool. So I assume this is coming out. I already closed the link, but I assume this is coming out pretty quickly because it was probably in the solicits.
September 10th.
Yeah.
Yep. And this will be a limited series. And then we'll see where Punisher goes after that. But once again, this is probably the right way to do it. Limited series, and then bring back Punisher and see what his new status quo is.
I like it. All right. Well, that takes us out of the news, but it is time. Todd, you're in the comic shop. I'm in the comfort of my studio, so we both got to get us an Uber XL, fancy big Cadillac Escalade pulls up, ready to take us to the Geek Easy, and this very familiar program advertisement is playing on the radio. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Secret Friends Unite! Let me tell you about Zencastr. We use them for our show, and now they're supporting us. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. Provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content, all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. And we chose Zencastr because of the ease of use, high quality output, and it makes it super easy for our guests to come on. We had multiple solutions we tried before, and Zencastr has just been the best fit for us. Why Zencastr? It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sounds and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. So if you're interested in making an easy, high-quality podcast just with the click of a browser button, go to Zencastr.com/pricing and use my code SFU1. You'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Now back to the show.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
We're sitting in the Geek Easy, cover band's playing, drinks are poured, and we are ready to get our nerd on. So this week, got to see some movies, which is great. For some reason, I go to a couple different theaters in the area. CMX is the one I had my membership with previously, where I found out that I had 3 free movie tickets just waiting for me, but they were going to expire in June. So I'm like, I'm going to go see some movies. So that's exactly what I did.
Nice.
Yep. So I saw 2 this weekend, and the first one was Sinners. You had already talked about Sinners previously, Charlie.
Great flick.
This movie, Ryan Coogler, man, he does not miss. And Michael B. Jordan, the dude can act his butt off. I've really come to really like him and his performances. And this movie, to your point, you mentioned like it's not really a musical, but music is such a big part of this movie.
Yeah,
the performances that are very unique, with especially the Irish like songs that I did not expect to be very cool and interesting were awesome.
Right.
And the dancing
those,
and
those folk songs. Yeah, it was fascinating. It was Irish Vampire versus the Twin Brothers, and at the end of it, I love the twist at the end where you jump forward to our core character.
Well, I mean, the typically these type of movies you do not get the post credit scene. We did get it, and it was so neat to see how they brought it together. And this movie was weird because it set up a very cool tone, and then all of a sudden it turns into, all out, just like from dusk till dawn.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it was just very different, very such a unique approach to this genre, and not being afraid to have some fun with it in regards to over top action, but also then take a step back. And I will say this: Michael B. Jordan, he wears a Cosby sweater very well.
Oh my God. Yeah, I did love because and again, this movie's been a while, so we're going to spoil okay. But yeah, we do find out that our young protagonist, the young man who has a career in music over the next 60 or 70 years after the core part of the film, is playing in a club in Chicago, and Michael B. Jordan and the delightful Haley Stenfeld, who are vampires, walk back in, and they say, we've let you live all these years because that was the deal before, it was for sparing the other guy's life, right? The other brother.
Mm-hmm.
We just came to say goodbye, and it was very touching how it was very touching kind of walk away. And I absolutely love that core scene where his music is so powerful that it breaks open the space-time continuum in this metaphysical way that doesn't become a part of the story, but you see all of this different because you have, the Asian couple. So you have the Asian culture represented in all of the, all the way from 70s hip hop back to
Native American,
Native American, African tribal music being played. That really, and then it pulls up to a sky of flames. It was just, this is a movie
which was just look forward to, because that's exactly what we saw at the end. So it was
the third act was nothing but carnage and blasting away. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. It was pretty incredible.
Very, very cool. And don't know. I mean, maybe I guess it was very lucky that one of them read Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's all I want to say. Because they knew what to do, apparently. Yeah. But so yes, definitely see it when you get a chance. Yeah, if you have not seen it, it'll be streaming probably eventually. I'm not sure who will own that. Maybe Warner Brothers.
Yeah, probably not too long. So all right. So tread carefully because we're seeing this. On
I
Thursday.
Definitely will.
Yes.
Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. This is the pseudo sequel. Well, it truly is a sequel to the last film.
Two-parter.
Which what was that called?
They called it part one, which they did not call this part two.
No,
I'll be honest with you. April and I said, well, one night this week, either probably tomorrow or the next day, we have to watch part 7 because I said, wasn't part 7 like there was a key or something, and it sunk in
there was
ice.
The entity, AI entity. The whole thing was essentially this. There is this entity that's going around, and the only way they can stop it is essentially get to its source code. That's the whole thing about it. The key in this Russian sub that washed up and found. So now they have to go there, get it. And, we have Isai Morales is the big bad, and named Gabriel. And while I loved the last film, I thought was so much fun, so many cool special effects, this movie, I don't know what Tom Cruise was thinking.
Yeah.
This movie, Charlie, I don't want to spoil anything, but I will tell you that I was talking to John as well because he saw it and we were chatting about it. We both kind of came to the same conclusion. It's like, I don't know what the hell. I think Tom Cruise finally lost it because in this movie, I felt it was so many decisions were made because I think he just feels like, oh, they want more of me, or they want it to see me do ridiculous things. And there was a transition of this movie where
does it kind of turn into Jackass, where he's just like, let me hang off of this plane, but for my ankle, or just like he's doing like.
I will say there was a lot of decisions made that were way too long. Fully focused to say, Tom Cruise say, hey, I did this stunt. You want to see it? You're going to see it for a long time.
Yeah.
And then there was just a lot. The dialogue was so like, let's just put they say reckoning a lot in this movie. Like, what?
It's kind of like in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where they always said, protect. I'm here to protect you. Protect. I watched a supercut of one of them saying protect. So I've heard 2 non-spoilery input. The first was from John because he saw it before any of us. He said the first hour, boring as hell. He didn't comment on the middle, and he said the last hour is pretty exciting. He also said it relies heavily on previous films. He said 1, 3, and 7. So they skip over 2, which is not surprising. And then Kurt saw it over the weekend, and he said it's wildly entertaining when you get to the last hour. So again, he was pretty much echoing what John said, that it's got a whiz-bang finish. I unfortunately
don't get your hopes up for that, Charlie, because I felt like this movie was just way too long.
Yeah.
Every bit of it way too long.
No
and
excitement
just
at
the
the
leaps
end.
of faith were so dumb. I laughed several times during this film.
With him saying, I need you to trust me one more time.
I will be curious to see what you think, because once again, I laughed several times during this movie, and I'm like, nobody else did. So I'm like, man, I guess they're just all in for the ride.
And again, this movie, we had, what do they call it? Stitch Possible was the showdown this weekend. Lilo and Stitch versus this film. Lilo and Stitch polling domestically about 165. This polled 63. That is a very big difference for what is
77 if you count the 4-day. Yeah, 77 and but I mean that's what you're expecting. It's kids. This was a long movie. You're getting less showings. There's so much more. There's factors in there, but also if you weren't into Mission Impossible 4, because once again, these movies don't do big business. They just don't. They make about maybe $200 million domestically.
Yeah. And they really. I remember a couple of years ago when the last film came out that expectations seemed to be a lot higher, and it really underdelivered. So I think it really definitely scaled.
Well, it was right in the middle of the whole Barbie thing, and it just didn't get extra weeks of performance because Barbie and Oppenheimer, they sucked up all the juice, and having a part 1 in the title also probably scared people away. And
very true. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And when you have a 3-hour movie. So, well, I'll be seeing it, and I will definitely give my take next week, but it sounds like it won't be dramatically different. So, all right, well, let's, we already talked a lot about Andor. Anything additional that you have to say?
I really don't know how they got Andor made, because there was so many things that traditionally Star Wars does that they just said, screw that. We're telling our story.
I do have an answer for you. Tony Gilroy was approached. He said no, because they wanted to do a movie of the week with him and K2 having adventures. He said no, that's going to run out of steam real quick. So Kathleen Kennedy said, do what you want, and he did. That is the story.
Thank God.
That is how it got made. Yeah, they said go nuts, because you're right. They made something, and again, over on Holocron, we're taking it bit by bit. We just did the second arc, so when you hear us next time, we'll be on 3, and then we'll move on to obviously the finale of it. But this has done what Star Wars has never done, which is why it is probably my favorite thing that Star Wars has ever done. I think
it's restraint. It's restraint. Yeah. They had years of nothing, where it's like jump ahead. What Star Wars would do is they would they'd have to tell you everything that happened in there versus saying we're mature and we can.
In a book or a comic, they still will. But on screen, you're absolutely right. They would have to. And it's what Lando had for breakfast the next day after Empire. Yeah.
And what Tony Gilroy will say, "Oh, you did something in the comics. Screw that. It doesn't happen anymore."
And he did
which I loved to pieces, because I've always said the worst thing about continuity in canon is when someone does something dumb, everybody else has to deal with it. Yeah. And once again, this is a story that didn't need to be told, but it was, well, I would say it probably did need to be told, because it was the first time we saw in Star Wars where we actually saw why the Empire is evil. And I know it's weird to say that because with the world, but that came down to like hand-wringing like villains and just we're shooting things, but we aren't seeing the regular people having to deal with what we would call oppression, which is we're going to take your shit. We're going to just move on. We're going to treat you horribly. You're going to be paranoid because you're always being spied upon. And,
the whole arc with Gorman, which they did in arcs 2 and 3, it's we need this thing to work on this part of the Emperor's energy project, see my air quotes, and we're willing to just murder an indigenous population and destroy their planet because we need this rock for this thing. And again, it's funny, all this post-analysis about the Death Star. The Death Star was up and running for about a week, and then it got blown up. So all of that was for almost absolutely nothing. Thank God, because of Cassian Andor, who people are going on to say is the absolute most important person in all of Star Wars. Can you disagree?
You saw the real sacrifice that these people made, and you realize, and it's so funny because I really do think Luthen is one of the best written characters I've seen in genre, because it's like what is it? What was that one phrase he said? We burn our nights. So for
A sunrise we'll never see.
We'll never see. I mean, just things like writing like that is just not typical in Star Wars because I would say most Star Wars, the writing doesn't matter. It's all about plot,
and explosions and laser swords. Absolutely.
Exactly. And a lot of exposition over explaining. And it's like, and then it's like under explaining things that just don't make any sense because we don't want to say anything more because the Emperor has returned.
Right.
So there we go. I would say Andor is not going to be for everybody. And I don't want everything to be like Andor. I just want them to learn from Andor, just like the quality over quantity.
Carry it forward.
Raise the bar of the writing. You can have cool and crazy weird shit happen, but just make the writing better.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
Well, it only takes one. So on the flip side of that, we have now wrapped up The Last of Us season 2, and we watched it just a few hours ago because
this is so early on. Yeah, it just wrapped up. I mean, like we're recording this on Monday. It ended Sunday.
I think we need to keep it kind of spoiler free, in my opinion, until next week or whatever. But I got to tell you, without and again, everybody knows because we've talked about it at length, my extraordinary admiration for the first season of this show. I was rabid for it. We've watched it probably 3 or 4 times through because it's a quick bite. I found this season to be kind of disappointing. I didn't find that it had a great throughfare, and it wasn't because of the death of our main character, which we've already talked about, being Joel. But it was lacking in consistency for me. Lots of exciting moments, but I've watched a couple of analysis videos, and I mean, Todd, I don't know. You've played the whole game. I know we have a whole nother season of this, which is going to be based on essentially.
I would say you've got 2 more seasons.
You think that?
I think it's going to be 4 seasons. Yeah, total.
I mean, I've heard the contrary, but I don't know. So, as a viewer who is watching this, and again, I can't help myself but compare it to the first season, which I was so in love with. This didn't do it for me in the same way. I don't know. You tell me.
This is where it's frustrating because sometimes the game is better than the show. In this instance, I would say the game is better than the show because you're not going to have to wait 2 more years or 3 more years before you get resolution. It's also you're getting to play as those characters, so you get more. When you're in their shoes, you tend to feel their story and their struggle more. Okay. So you're getting more of it in their perspective. So in the show, you're not getting it from you're watching it from their perspective, but you're not in their shoes. You're just getting empathetic if you see things happen. And in a lot of ways, this is going to be the Abby Ellie, just clarity of where they stand. Yeah. And you're going to see a lot of things. And this is where the hard part is. A lot of the characters you thought you knew, or you thought you truly expected to see what they were like, it's going to be a vast ocean of difference, because where people are like, oh, I love Ellie. And like, you get to see what Ellie is like, and you get to realize maybe Ellie isn't a great person. Maybe you realize all the trauma she's been through is making her. There's a line that she makes,
or there should be a line, and there's no line where there should be a line.
Well, because this is a damaged person, and they're not going to magically, be better just because of something happened. And you see so many, and even though they had a therapist there, she obviously didn't do enough with the therapist because,
and their therapist, when your therapist is Catherine O'Hara, I think you're in trouble anyway.
Well, and who drinks heavily as part of her character. Yeah, exactly. But I think with Ellie at this point, you get to, and I said this very times, she is a very frustrating character after a while to be like, you just want to shake her and just say, wake up. But once you find out that she is very selfish in a lot of ways, then you realize, okay, I get it. I see what they're doing. The writers are doing this intentionally based on what we see, because they don't want to make someone a saint. And they want to show their flaws. Yeah. Kind of like Breaking Bad. After a while, you realize, Walter White, not a good guy.
He was doing some stuff and you were kind of on his side for a while, but now really not so much. Yeah.
So and I said there's a lot more convoluted stuff in the story where the first game was just a simple, very focused. This one is a little bit more convoluted. You're learning more about the world, and it's complex. You're having to have the story on many more areas and people. And so because of that, it can be less I mean, we got a couple heart touching moments this season, I think, that were nice, but you didn't get like the breakout Bill episode, right?
Yeah, you didn't have the real feel good vibe. So, so we were just April and I were talking about this after it's over. You know, when we don't have the strike in the way, will we see season 3 next year, or is it gonna be a 2-year window? Are we gonna see it in 27? That's what I'm wondering.
Question.
Yeah.
I mean, now you don't have Pedro Pascal's schedule to deal with.
Right.
Maybe it's easier. I think get it done quickly because there's only Jeffrey Wright, which I would say is the big name.
The big bad.
So maybe they can do that.
You know, and they've really posited Catherine Deaver's character of Abby as taking the lead in this next season. That was what was really illustrated in the couple analysis videos I watched this afternoon. For a portion, one that said, well, you know, you because at this point in the game you take over as Abby for a while. That you're playing as her. So obviously they're gonna, and then we're, like I said, we're dancing around keeping it spoiler free. We want to give people a chance because it'll only be Tuesday when you're hearing this, and this only came out Sunday. So but hit us up on socials, let us know your thoughts, and we can certainly come back and if you have comments, leave them anywhere that you find us, and we'll give those tags at the end of the episode, and we'll continue to talk about it. So, all right. Well, I got some quick bites. As you know, I was up north with my in-laws, which means my face was buried in my tablet in my Marvel Unlimited app. So it gave me a chance to connect on some older stuff, and even some newer stuff. So I have wondered for a while about the character of Spider-Boy. This is a new Spider-Man character that there's a figure out now. So a couple of weeks ago, there has just been a string of these, and I read one because it was the character's kind of second like transition into the 616 area. But in the Spider-Verse, which I've always loved, the Spider-Verse has been around since 2014. There's a Web of Destiny, and in this one miniseries I read, if a line is cut, that character disappears, a la the brand new, or the One More Day, Brand New Day, where or what happened to Tom Holland with the Doctor Strange spell in Spider-Man No Way Home. He is erased from existence and nobody ever knew him. So this kid, his name is Bailey, manages to recover himself in one of these miniseries and come to the 616, which is where he is from, but nobody knows him. So I read, half of one of these follow-on stories where he actually arrives and he goes to the feast. Feast is where Aunt May runs basically a community kitchen or shelter. He knows Aunt May, but she doesn't know him. But he takes up residence there, and you learn about his origin, that he was a little kid who was experimented on, much like, all these other subjects, where he got spider powers, but he also has the ability to manifest into like a spider face. If you look at his figure, which is out now, his Marvel Legends figure, he has a swap out head where he has monster head. So kind of interesting, but it was funny when the kid pulls his masks off. Do you remember in all those old Rankin and Bass cartoons, the Frosty and stuff, how they would always have the red-haired kid with the giant hair? That's this kid. That is this kid. Yeah, that's exactly who he is. So it's too bad the figure doesn't come with a third head. That's just a Rankin and Bass kid. I thought it was funny. It's funny along the same lines as like Squirrel Girl, which is funny because she shows up in the second story of the first issue, and I'm on board.
Okay, so it's more a comedic book.
Sorta. It's got a little bit more of that taste.
Goofy.
But really Spider-Man itself, Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man quips and everything, but it doesn't really stay, quite comedic so far. But there's about 9 or 10 issues out now. I'll probably keep reading it. It's on Marvel Unlimited. It's been out for about 6 or 8 months now. So I enjoyed it. So I subscribed to 2 series, one of which I thought was a one-shot, but it turns out it's ongoing, particularly by the end. But this is the first miniseries in a long time for The Thing, which is one of my favorite Marvel characters, obviously my favorite member of the Fantastic Four. I read this is a series set in his past, so it's him having to trounce down Yancey Street, and it's revealed at the end of this first issue who the big bad is, and it's someone who has been in the zeitgeist in the MCU recently, so it's a big MCU big bad, to find a lost denizen of Yancey Street. So if you're a fan of The Thing, you'll probably definitely enjoy it, and it's available now. I picked up a new Spider-Man and Wolverine, which I thought was a one-shot, but it is a number one because it is written by Mark Guggenheim, who you're going to hear on Spotlight. I think that hits our network feed next week, but it might hit our Patreon next week and the network feed after that. So if you'd like to hear it, now's the time to jump over to our Patreon. But he is a wonderful writer that Todd and I had an awesome conversation with. with, and I'm a fan of his
Absolutely.
stuff. He does absolutely great stuff. So, cool series. Spidey and Wolverine have to team up, but this actually ties back to a Spider-Man storyline from 1965 about Peter Parker's parents. And think about the Winter Soldier and Tony Stark's parents, and a connection that has never been before revealed. Which was
they were swingers. No,
Tony Stark's parents were swingers. Oh my god!
Sure, why not? Hanging out with the Parkers and whoever else.
But anyway, both of those are available at your local comic shop or on Kindle via Comixology. So turn it in. So finally, very quickly, and Todd, spoiler free, because we've talked about it here on the show, but we've enjoyed the Fear Street little anthologies that are spun off as, is it the Goosebumps guy? What is he, R.L. Stein?
R.L. Stein. Yep, this is more a teen adult horror film.
It's teens, but it's very adult. But yeah, we watched those. God, those came out back in 21 or 22, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
But this is one we teased on the show a little while back. It's set in it's Shady Side is the name of the community, which is great. Shady Side. But it is 1988, and this class of teens is going to have their prom. And it was funny, as I was watching with April, she says, well, it's weird because you have people running for prom queen, where usually in high school people get nominated to be on the court or whatever, but people are running for prom queen like they'd be running for student council, but whatever. It's a minor plot point. But you end up with, 5 girls who are all running, only one of which is a name actor, and that's Ariana Greenblatt. So who do you think gets killed first? Not surprising.
Aww.
Oh, it's not surprising. But yeah, one by one, these girls are all being targeted by a mysterious killer. And I will admit, the twist at the end, didn't see it coming. As far as who the killer was, maybe you'll figure it out right away and you'll say Charlie's an idiot. That's fine. But we have God, what's the guy's name? He was the jock in American Pie. Chris Klein is
he's back.
Yeah, he's a teacher at this school. His wife is Catherine Watterson, who was in that terrible Harry Potter spinoff. She was the love interest in the Case one with Case. Those movies you hated.
Okay. Oh, yeah. The French lady? She was French? Wasn't she French?
No, she wasn't French. You think in the regular Harry Potter there was the French school. She was just a regular.
Oh yeah, she was the goofy kind of flirty friend of.
Yeah, exactly. Of Eddie Redmayne, who I know you hate, because of the way he talks. But yeah, it's fun. Tune it in. That's on Netflix. So it's very accessible. You probably had Netflix anyway. So Todd, tune in on it and let me know what you think. Let me know if you figured it out when I didn't. But anyway, that does take us out of the Thunderdome. I have got my Air Qantas app out. It is time to get us down to the land down under, where Hologram Tina and the mutants await for us to continue the summer of Superman with Superman Part 2.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome.
Thank you, Tina. The mutants have been gathered for a topic or a game to be entertained. And this week, we are looking back in the summer of Superman with Superman 2. Very rarely did we get sequels to movies. This is before, I believe, we got Jaws 2. And this is right around the time that we did get Empire Strikes Back. It would have been, sequels were a very new thing.
This was I didn't really realize this. This, it says release dates December 1980 in Australia, June 1981 in the United States. I had no idea this came out in 1981. I thought it came out.
It was a weird, it's so weird to have a delayed release like that. Yeah, too. So this movie, came out, as we said, in right around late 80 to the mid 1981.
Yeah.
This was budget was $54 million and made about $200 million. Worldwide.
Definitely.
And I believe in this movie was a little bit weird, but essentially it's a continuation of the last film. It opens up with a very long opening that essentially was, here's the plot, kids, because you might have missed Superman, one of the biggest films.
The entire credits was a previously on.
Exactly.
Well,
It was
and
very
just,
odd.
And just to wrap up, the big controversy, and again, we have some links around this, which we can certainly share in the flow. The big controversy is that you and I both know this film and the previous one were set to basically be filmed at once and then split in two or whatever. It is, two different scripts, because Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather, as we talked about in our last episode, wrote this along with David and Leslie Newman, whose work I am not familiar with, but were brought on. And then I don't know that they were associated with previous film. But Puzo is credited with both the screenplay and the story. And this was going to be completed by Richard Donner, who gave us the first film. We gave the first film a rave review last time because it's a classic of our time in this genre. But there was a falling out, of which there is much history about, which again can be all detailed here, where Richard Donner left the project after filming a significant amount. There is a Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, which I own and is available out there to check out. It doesn't really tell a coherent story, but it does tell a very different story. Todd, you've watched it at some point, haven't you? But we did not for this. Yeah,
I did, and I mean, some of the points were that it was less comedic. It definitely had some interesting, just small differences in a lot of ways that I don't know if you would notice, but obviously he was the guy that brought Superman to the page and or the screen, and you thought that maybe he would be ready to do this again, and Marlon Brando returned. We didn't get that. We did get Clark's mom, Laurel, showing up again.
Laurel.
Apparently, Lex Luthor was a bigger part of the movie as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But, and again, without getting into, there was the Salkinds fought with who are the masterminds behind the film, fought with Donner. They brought in, and this will just always blow my mind, British director Richard Lester, who I've mentioned many times, directed The Beatles in 1964 in A Hard Day's Night, which is a wonderful film. I'm an enormous Beatles fan. Anybody who knows me knows that about me. But the two don't jibe, because when the frustrations between Donner and Lester got too big, Donner was out and Lester took over, and you can definitely feel a tonal shift of what Donner style is versus Richard Lester's kind of very comedic take on some things that we'll get into. But anyway.
Yeah, and we can touch on probably some of the differences as we go through these plot points. Yeah. And as like I did last time, I took a lot of notes as I was watching. So it's not plot points, it's just myself thinking, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing. And we will riff off his notes. All right, so we begin, and if I might, your opening sequence, so now we're after the credits where we had the recap, is a total twisting and turning of what was the first scene of the first movie, which had Brando in it. Now he's not there. You get a weird guard, for example, that the big guy. So that we have our three. I love it how Todd calls them Zod-nauts. You have Zod, who is Terrence Stamp, who is Zod, very famous, and he was played in the first Star Wars film as well as the guy that Palpatine kicks out of the Senate in order to take his job. You have Sarah Douglas, who is the female. I'm going to forget, not Nora. What the
Ursa.
Ursa, thank you.
Ursa.
And then you have a big bruiser called Nan, who doesn't speak. And he walks up behind this guy wearing like a suit and a weird helmet with the symbol on it and just like breaks the guy's neck. Like, why was that necessary? But yeah, it's very odd. But it
was like a setup too. It was like, it's a setup. You're going to, and then Zod breaks a red piece of kryptonite,
and then
I didn't understand.
It activates the stasis field they're in, and then all of the dialogue.
What if they had just moved out of the way, Charlie? Because the things just came straight down, and they're all like right next to each other.
Yeah, exactly. Hold it, excuse me. So that first scene plays out, and so they end up in the album cover of the Phantom Zone, which comes by and sucks them up, and they float off, and then time passes. And and again, we talked about it last time, how Lex Luthor was reading, or Otis was reading in a newspaper article. Well, by the way we judge time, Krypton blew up in 1948, which means Superman was the same age as my mother, because that's the year she was born. And he arrived in on Earth in like 1952 or something. And so it's now 1980. So and Krypton is 6 galaxies away or some shit like that. How did the record album arrive in Earth orbit, which is how this all gets teed off, in that 40 something year time, 30 something year time period. What's up? Did they fall through a wormhole, I guess, like in Star Trek? Maybe?
Because they wrote a sequel and it had happened, Charlie.
They had to get there. Yeah. So anyway, so like you said, they tee it up. Clark Kent, who's of course Superman, shows up to work one day. He's talking to the little rascal guy. Did we actually figure out he was one of the little rascals, or did we just make that up?
No, I believe Jackie Cooper, which I'll look it up. You keep talking. I'll tell you if you.
So yeah, he says, "Hey, there's a terrorist. Terrorists are going to blow up the Eiffel Tower. We sent Lois there to cover it." Which means Lois is in the middle of it. She's stuck underneath an elevator that these terrorists are moving a hydrogen bomb to the top of the Eiffel Tower so they can blow it up. Anyway, Superman shows up in time to rescue her, but the hydrogen bomb is on the elevator car, which he pushes into space. Does he push it into the sun, or am I thinking about that happens in Superman 4?
He took it a really long way. I'm like, did he really have to go that far?
Yeah. Well, I guess.
But yeah, he was trying to shoot to the sun, but the nuclear blast essentially released certain people.
Right. Yeah. So the album cover is flipping through space, and it's in the exact right place where the elevator car blowing up frees them. And so they're free. They go down to the moon, where of course there is a moon landing happening at that exact moment. And they're in trouble because Cliff Clavin is running NASA, I guess.
Yeah, and apparently got fired because for screwing up so bad. Now he's works for the Postal Service.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But yeah, the as you said in your note, can Kryptonians breathe in space and fly with the yellow sun? Because doesn't one of them use their freezy breath, or is that when they get down to Earth? I can't remember.
Well, that's the thing I didn't understand, because they did not have the yellow sun to give them powers until they erupted, and they finally got them. Like, it just feels like Kryptonians probably can't breathe no air in space.
Can breathe no air.
Breathe no air.
Breathe
but
with no air. Remember that old song?
It's so this like the whole thing with the Kryptonians and their abilities and things, considering they have not been around the yellow sun for decades like Superman had, yet all of a sudden they can do all this stuff right away was very
they just
it was a leap of faith at best. Yes,
absolutely. So anyway, yes, they kind of kill these astronauts, which kind of sucks. And then they make their way to the old classic inflatable spacesuit. I thought it was so funny because she rips the patch off the guy's spacesuit and he falls down like.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden all the void of space is filling up his suit, and it's straight.
I thought it was the other way around. So then our people fly down to Earth and they land in a stream. Oh, they hear over that. And it's funny because I say this all the time. They hear that they're talking to Houston. The astronauts are. They overhear this, and they keep calling it Planet Houston, which is I say that all the time. I know that's the one thing with the movie that I'm like, if I'm going to Texas or something like that, I'm going to Planet Houston. I will quote that.
I didn't notice the Houston. Houston. I thought he said Houston. But one thing you forgot, Charlie, we had to get us back to our favorite villain, Lex Luthor. Yeah. We see him and Otis in prison, wearing classic prison garb, and they are creating an escape plan. Yes. And their escape plan is essentially a projector, like a rear screen projector, and they escaped jail. And then they got rescued with a balloon.
And so Otis doesn't escape, but it's Miss Tessmacher from the first film. In this hot air balloon with no food or water, I'm guessing, they fly from wherever that is to the Arctic, where the Fortress of Solitude is, which do we know how Lex knows where it's at? Do you read it in the paper?
Well, I believe he found out about a explosion or some disruption in that area.
Okay.
And he determined that's where it all occurred. That's where, just for some reason, he thought it would be a good place to look because of the explosions.
Right.
And and they also, when they landed, they had full suits for exploring the Arctic.
Right. Yeah, because they hiked for a while, and they get into the Fortress of Solitude, which, much like the ships in Star Wars, nobody ever closes the door, so you can just walk in. You can just wander into someplace, and it's great. So Lex starts playing with the crystals, and he picks the exact right one where Clark's earthly or Kryptonian mother shows up and just happens to tell them about the 3 Kryptonian supervillains that are on their way to Earth at that exact moment. Incredible.
I called it a super convenient crime crystal.
That's that's what we call a plot crystal.
So at this point, so we get the Lex plot line, we get the Kryptonians plot line, but then we go back to this is the weirdest thing. So like Lois is putting herself in all of these like precarious positions to get a Pulitzer Prize,
right?
Like in Paris, and now she is reassigned with Clark to investigate a honeymoon, racket
at Niagara Falls. Yeah, so they're at Niagara Falls pretending to be a newlyweds, and they're doing this because it's going to expose a newlyweds hotel that's ripping people off. It's like, who gives a shit? It's not
exactly like this, and you're spending this much money to send them there as a newlywed couple. The room they're in is great. They got a creepy bellhop who keeps doing the winky. Whatever you're gonna do in this bed here.
Hubba, like on The Simpsons when Homer and Mindy, that episode where he's almost hooks up with a coworker. So they're in the room, and then Clark gives her a corsage for some reason, as you wrote it in your notes. It's like, is that something? I've never done that on a date. My prom story is not a great one, so that's literally the only. And when I got married, so there's corsages when you get married. That's a thing. So Lois is now. Oh, so a kid is. I always love this. There's a moronic kid who is unsupervised, hanging off the rail at.
Niagara Falls,
and he falls, and then Clark.
Well, he does it once, and it's like they get mad at him, and of course, mom and dad aren't paying attention to him.
Why should they?
And
of course,
yes, exactly.
And so he falls, but Clark, Clark catches wind of this and changes Superman and flies, and then so this is a big difference between the way we've seen Superman portrayed in the more modern era, where he'll hang out in space and he has ears that can hear all of Earth at once. So yeah, he could go anywhere at any time because he can hear everything. Where, she's applying kind of the Spider-Man logic, like, well, how come I never see Peter and Spider-Man in the same place at the same time? Because Spider-Man doesn't fly around, where Superman can get anywhere at any time. So after Superman rescues the kid and changes back into Clark, says, "Oh gosh, Lois, I fell in the toilet or something." She's like, "Okay," and then they go.
I know. I wanted to get you a hot dog.
Yeah, a hot dog.
And everybody left, and he just ended up grabbing 2 hot dogs without paying for them.
Yeah.
So Superman, bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yes, now Lois is really convinced that he's Superman, so she puts herself in a dumb situation where she jumps in the river, not the falls, and he has to fake rescue her by zapping a branch or whatever. And so she's like, "Oh, I guess I was all wrong about that." But this plot line continues when they're back in the room, and she's sitting there drying her hair, and she's like, "Clark, will you get me something across the room?" And he gets
I cannot find my hairbrush. I cannot find my hairbrush.
And then he walks and then stumbles, but he dumps his hand in the fire, and she's like, "Oh my God, let me see." And then when she pulls it out, his hand is fine. And then he finally breaks down and says, we get a great line here. She says, "I can't believe I did something so stupid." And she says, "Well, maybe you wanted to do it with your heart, and that's why you created that fake situation."
Right. Yeah, you didn't think with your brain, you thought with your heart. Yeah.
And so, but all right, flashback to Kryptonians, and this is when they get to Earth and they splash down, and they're in Idaho, which is later revealed. And they're testing.
That's Idaho?
Yeah, they say so. Yeah,
I felt like we were in like
Nebraska. It felt very
Hazard County, like with Roscoe P. Coleman and Boss Hogg. Yeah, I mean, it felt like or the cops from Smokey and the Bandit. It felt like that's what we're going for.
They absolutely said Idaho, because I was curious too. And this will lead us into the part of the film that I find the most ridiculous when we get there. But yeah, they a couple of cops pull up and they lift a car up and use they don't hurt them, but they use the laser beam to make to melt. Oh, I love it. He shoots his he has a sawed-off shotgun, the one cop does. He zaps it and makes it too hot, but he can also use it to move objects.
Well, they had levitation abilities, which you'll feel like this is a part of this movie you get, like where they're just making up stuff and powers as it goes for the story versus any type of, oh, we've seen that before. No, we haven't.
Right.
We didn't see Superman use any of these powers.
And then we jump into, as I said, the most ridiculous part of the film for me, and the one that I'm 100% certain got written by someone who is not American, which would be Richard Lester, or he shot it in such a way, because you go to basically, it feels like a Dust Bowl town, because you have the main kid, the main person you're following around is this young teenage boy with a dirty smudge on his face, and he's wearing bib overalls and no shoes, because that's when you live in the country. I missed that. Yep. When you need to live in the country, you don't need shoes. And he's walking around, and he's literally like doing a funny, like, kind of walk. And our bad guys show up, and they walk into the very brightly lit dank bar, which is, dank bars can't be brightly lit. They beat a guy up arm wrestling. They throw a guy through a wall. And then you're right, we get into the levitation powers where they zap a dude and they levitate him in the air. And this is when our, boy comes in. Don't hurt my papa, or something, like he's some ridiculous accent. Please don't hurt my papa, sir. And then the army shows.
He's a general.
Up. Yeah.
Please, General Zod, don't hurt him.
Exactly. So, and then the army shows up. And they have
the worst army in the world. It's like one Jeep and like a bunch of guys in bad military garb.
A gunship. And the part with the flamethrower was absurd. That was drawn in, and it was bad. It's just this whole sequence, which goes on for at least 5 to 7 minutes, it's pitiable. So they overthrow this one town in Idaho, and there's a newsman who shows up and says, well, he says, will this thing, can I address the planet? Yeah, you can address the planet with the link up. And he says, I've come for the son of Jor-El, and the president will kneel before me. And says just very, and then they're off to Washington. But in the meantime, Todd, what's happening with Superman and Lois?
Well, Superman and Lois, basically, they decided, well, now that I'm Superman, Lois, I'll just divulge everything. And she says, well, I better get changed. So they are off to the Fortress of Solitude. And they, at this point, then what does Clark say? He says, well, I'm going to get dinner. So now I have to have a montage of me flying to different parts of the world to get you the finest food in all of the land.
He goes to Cambodia. And this is where I get a little fuzzy. So they're having dinner. And at some point, it becomes necessary for him to say, well, if we're going to be together, I have to be a human being. Can't be Superman anymore. So he's having he has this interactive holographic conversation with his dead mother. And she's like,
she's Alexa.
Yeah. She's Alexa. She's Lara Alexa.
Hey, Mom, how can I become a human?
Yeah. She says, well, if you really, it was Mom who said, well, if you really want to be with her, you got to be a human being. She says, fortunately, we got you covered. Step into the chamber. There's a one-time thing that turns you into a mortal. So they do that. And this is when things get a little fuzzy. They turn mortal, and then they hook up. They go to his golden Superman bed.
Well, the power vault that he went into to turn him back, it was like the weirdest special effects, like wacky X-rays. It looks like you could see his skull for some reason. So, and then, my favorite part, Charlie, when he got transformed, it took him out of his super suit and it immediately put him into
70s gear.
Like a button-up shirt. It's like, okay.
A button-up shirt.
Apparently we've got the perfect human outfit that we spied, and here it is.
Well, that's not only that, but it also hooks them up with a car that they somehow get back into provincial Canada and can get.
Well, no, you've gone too fast. We did get the nitty gritty.
They go,
and then, before we do that, it's like, I love that Lois says, like, let me change into something a little more comfortable. She comes out in like the ugliest, like horrible,
and again,
frontier woman outfit to get sexy time with.
Where do they even get clothes? But this threw out a theory that I thought I had, because I thought when we saw the 2006 Superman Returns, I thought when they hooked up, that's when she got pregnant with Super Bastard, the kid. And that would not have followed this, because when they did hook up, he was not Superman. He was not superpowered. So that just throws that I had misremembered that. So
I mean, doesn't mean he's not super
sperm
endowed.
didn't still have some super sperm.
So-
But yeah, you're
I
right.
mean,
So
sure.
they hook up, and then now they got to go back to humanity, but they have a car, and they somehow leave the Arctic, and you see them driving down a road. Now, a lot of this was filmed in Canada.
Well, maybe they're in Alaska, going down the Canadian Shield or whatever to go down through Canada to get back to New York. So, Canada and New York aren't that far apart.
And so they end up in a trucker diner, which is a very small place. And, they sit down. I love it how Lois eats like the most garbage food, and you'd think she'd weigh 400 pounds, but she's like, I'll have 2 cheeseburgers and 5 cigarettes and fries and heroin.
And fresh squeezed orange juice.
That's what keeps her so skinny.
It keeps coming back. Yeah.
And Clark's like, well, I got to have a whiz. And then when he comes back, this big trucker dude comes in and sits down, and he's hitting on Lois. And Clark comes out and he says, you're in my seat, dude. He says, well, I'm not in your seat anyway. Why don't you kiss my ass? And then Clark is like, why don't you step outside and blah, 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 blah. And then this trucker dude kicks the shit out of Clark and throws him through a phone booth, and he's bleeding. And I love how quickly all of this happens. He falls through the phone booth. He's bleeding. He turns around. Zod and his gang is on the TV. They have overthrown the United States by going to the White House, and the president surrenders, and that's when Lex Luthor shows up, but we'll get into that in a minute. And Clark says, well, I've got to go back. And Lois is like, you can. It was a final whatever. And he says, I'm not the man I should be. She says, I want the man I fell in love with. I'm like, but she fell in love with Superman. So why does she want...
Exactly. Why did she want weak-ass Clark? Because that was not part of the bargain.
Exactly. Yeah. So now he's like, well, I have to go back with no car because, Lois, you need to go back home again.
And a members-only jacket. And
he's going to go back into the Arctic. He gets all the way to the fortress, and he goes to the burned-out chamber, and he starts begging with his holographic mother, who's not even there, but he's just saying, Father, Mother, help me. And another crystal light goes, oh, we actually had a backup. It starts, it's a green one. Was
that the backup one that fell on the floor, or that Lois put her purse on?
Yeah, it was used as a coaster.
Was trying to steal it, and it didn't get in the back. This might be an emerald. We'll steal for later.
Yeah. Why does she need a purse? She's in the Arctic.
Exactly.
But obviously, and then it cuts away, but he's holding the crystal, and you're like, well, it's obvious he's going to get his powers back. And so, yes, then you have a montage. I love how you call them the Kryptonauts. Are going around like they go and they change the what's the
Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, that Trump wants to change Mount Rushmore. And then you're right. Then they go to the they're in the Oval Office. They get the president to surrender. They're hanging out there. Several days have gone by because he makes mention of it. And Lex Luthor shows up and says, I can get you Superman, because if I take you to his girlfriend.
He actually is the Superman, is the son of Jor-El. And he's like, because I need him to kneel before me, because if I don't say he'll kneel before me, what else will I say in this film?
Right. So, so they do then go to Metropolis. They confront the gang at the Daily Planet. It's pointed out that hang on to her, Superman will show up, and he does show up. And now we get a very long,
So she went back to work.
Yeah,
that quick.
Well, she's a reporter. She's doing her job. It's the biggest story of all time. So Superman shows up, and now it's time for a dance-off kind of third act fight scene that is all filmed in. Really, it's the same big setup at Elstree or Levingston, where they end up filming, they film Star Wars and The Shining and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Batman '89, because a lot of it looks very similar to Batman '89, which was filmed just a few years later. We get a long fight. The most notable of you said get off the street cities. The most notable bit of which, because I watched a video about this recently, is all of the regular people, including one guy dressed as a sailor, picking up the traffic cones and walking towards the Kryptonians like they're going to use them as clubs.
Oh, it was great. There were so many great moments in this too, Charlie, because at the beginning of the movie, when Clark was walking past the street, he got hit by a taxi. The taxi got damaged. Well, a good throwback was they showed the same taxi still not fixed. So I like that, the taxi car driver there. There's a lot of great one-liners during the fight, which was very fun. Like one was essentially it was who got hit by the by the was it Non that got hit by the
got hit into the
by the bat.
sign?
Yeah. And he says, home run. I said, home run indeed. So, right. People are just sitting there watching regardless of like the chaos.
Ursa does throw a manhole cover at Superman, and I did notice it hits him, and then he hits the taxi, perhaps what you were talking about. But if you look him real backwards, it's bent, but also stuck to his chest somehow. Like it went into it didn't just leave him a bruise. It was like he was impaled on it, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. We got a lot of advertisements in Metropolis, like everything. My favorite one is that basically Zod threw Superman into a Marlboro cigarette truck, and it was full on Marlboro. We've got the Kentucky Fried Chicken place where a lady comes out and says, "My chicken," or something like that.
The antenna, you forgot your sauce. Whoa, getting blown, because that's when they're doing the air blow. So it's just, this goes on for probably 10 minutes. Of
way too long
of this different stuff. And
we got the lady who loses her wig and she goes, "Oh, my hair." Right. And then we've got the guy in the phone booth where the phone booth falls over, and he's just still talking, but he's laughing hysterically while he's on the floor, and obviously the phone isn't even connected anymore.
And again, this just all really feels like Donner wouldn't have touched any of this kitschy shit with the 10-foot pole. This is definitely
so done.
Richard Lester.
And my favorite part was the guy on rollerblades, Charlie, or the roller skates. Do you see that part where he's wearing like this bedazzled vest and he's on rollerblades and he's just getting pushed back? I'm like, what is even happening?
I know, but oh my God. So anyway, it does finally wind down. They said, well, the only way we're going to get him is to grab Lois and to get out of here. And they grab Luthor as well, and they go back to the Fortress
of Solitude,
because obviously Luthor knows where it's at. And Superman follows them, and they're like, all right, well, you're going to go into... Oh, no, it wasn't even... So what exactly... I'm trying to remember. What exactly goes down?
So they do end up getting into a big battle. So Lex is there, Lois is there. They get into a big battle. Superman's doing pretty well. You get like the infamous chest symbol saran wrap that he throws at Non. You get finger beams. You get like they're all of a sudden the Kryptonians start shooting finger beams. Then you get then you get them teleporting, and then Superman uses holograms. And it's just so weird, like all these powers and things we never saw before,
and never again. And of course, the penultimate one comes at the end of the film as far as weird powers. But so they're to a stalemate. But he says, "All right, I think they grab Lois. He's like, It's Ursa grabs Lois. Says, I'm gonna tear her head off. He says, fine, I'll surrender. And he says to Luthor, Luthor, try to trick them into this chamber because it'll take their powers away. And then Luthor sells them out. And so they get in the chamber, but Superman pulls a switcheroo. Then when he flips the button, he's safe, but it takes their powers away. And then, he throws, he does the big old handshake thing where he squishes and all this bone.
Well, he finally kneeled. He finally kneeled.
But he grabs Zod's hand and it's all this bone crack, and it's like, oh God. And he picks him up and throws him. And then Non tries to fly and he falls into the abyss. And then Lois turns around and has you're a real pain in the neck. And then hits Ursula, and they all just fall to their deaths. That's all that's going on. They're dead.
That's why I call it Super Pitfall. It's like, are they dead? What happened to them? Why are all these? It's not a very safe location if there's all of these just open chasms in the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah.
I don't know what the designer was thinking, but bad idea. But when he picked up Zod, you just look up in his suit and he's just sweating out. He's got a pit stain right there. It's so hilarious. I'm like, they should have not shown that or put a pad in there.
Somebody should have been watching the dailies on that one. But it's funny how he picks Zod up and then he flips him over like he was on the monkey bars or something.
Yeah.
And then he flings him. Maybe that's why he was sweating so much. So that sequence ends. They obviously take Luthor back to jail. They go back to their normal lives, but then so it's the next day at work or whatever. They're having a moment.
No, they didn't take Lou further back. They left him at the Fortress of Solitude, which was exactly. They said, "Oh, you're going to give me a ride back?" And he's just taking back Lois. So we don't know what happened to Lex.
I mean, he does show. He doesn't show up in the next movie, but he's in the next one. So he just left him in his top secret headquarters so he could do something else. That's sure. That's a solid
perfectly good idea.
Well, I was wrong about jumping forward to the normal lives, but what? Oh no, wait. Maybe this is perhaps interposed with what happens, but you're right. That's when we get. I was correct. So they're back at the Daily Planet. Lois is crying like, I love you, but I'll keep your secret. But I know it's just so hard. And she's like, don't worry, Lois, it'll be fine. And then they have the big lip lock, and Superman now also has these telekinetic powers that perhaps we didn't know he had. So when he kisses her,
super amnesia powers, apparently.
He makes her forget that poor. It's like casting a spell, like Doctor Strange. She does like a Doctor Strange thing, like with Spider-Man.
But only up until the point that she discovered it. Yeah.
Right.
Because she's been mind wiped or anything. So it's kind of like this it's just very weird because everybody remembers him and he was never revealed. So it was just very odd. And this is the part where I think you're going to mention it. This is what it changed. So originally Donner, once again, was going to go back to the turn back the earth again and basically go back to the point where Lois forgot. But once again, it doesn't solve the fact that the Kryptonians still came.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what? If we have to choose between the two, this was clearly the better way to go, but it still sucks.
I was going to say, only an improvement of
It's kind of,
I guess.
It's kind of like picking which presidential candidate to vote for. They're both terrible, but my dad always says you kind of hold your nose like this and then go into the voting booth. That was kind of what this was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. So, we do get a cap where Superman goes and inflicts violence on a stranger for spite. So he goes back to the diner. And it was funny. There was a diner or a like rural bar reference in The Man of Steel. Because don't you remember that there was the one jerk trucker who Clark decides to destroy this guy's truck by putting it through like a telephone pole?
Yep.
So but yeah, Superman does this very comical, picks the guy up and sets him down on the thing and pushes him down the he does like like the milkshake going down the slide or the
straight into a pinball machine.
Yeah, right into a pinball. So he trashes this guy's place and then he says, well, here, sir, here's a bunch of money. I don't know how Clark has money, but maybe he pressed a diamond and sold it.
But Charlie, you passed up the best part when Clark comes in and he says the line, hey, I've never seen garbage eat garbage before. I'm like, good zinger, Costanza.
I was like, yeah, because this guy who's the worst customer of all time is sitting there like talking shit about like, give me some more of that garbage to eat. This is it's the best garbage I've ever had. Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. Where did the money come from and why did he forget the hamburger? But yes. All right. And then Superman, I think they just loop the footage from the last one where he's just flying in space going dee dee dee, and it's kind of a nothing ending. And then
it says coming soon, Superman 3, and I said with 100% more Richard Pryor and Robert Vaughn.
Right, and I don't believe we're going to go on to talk about Superman 3. We're going to move on to the Man of Steel after this. But yeah, I love Superman 3. Because it's the first one I think that I really engaged with as a kid. But it
was a weird film, but yes, I same thing. I was a good age that I could actually see it and remember it.
It's weird, but it's not bad like this is. Because wrapping things up, I couldn't believe how bad this was watching it again, and I feel bad saying it. But it's a perfect example of, with the first one, we had a hit film. We hit all the notes. Some of it was silly, but some of it was, we had a John Williams score and we had some great performances, and You Will Believe a Man Could Fly. It was a groundbreaking. And then we're like, all right, we made a lot of money. Let's make another one. We had the guy who made the first one great. We pissed him off. He took off. Let's bring in the Hard Day's Night guy to finish it. And it's a train wreck. In particular, the second half of this movie in particular is complete nonsense, because this movie was 2 hours long, and it was like,
it was definitely a interesting approach. I was just trying to see how much the budget was, because
it says at the top it was like 55 million and 54 million, and with a box office of 216. It says.
Yeah. So the first film was $55 million and it made 300. So,
okay. So
the worst part about it was obviously there's the amount of special effects and having 3 or 4 Kryptonians total. I mean, they needed to probably spend a little bit more money, and obviously, having to then go back and redo a lot of the things that Don had already done and starting from scratch. It just seems like this has been a movie that should have been like we talked about the Marvel films, maybe pushing this out and doing something better. But they were like, I mean, obviously you could tell at the end of this movie, Superman 3 will return, or Superman 3 is coming. So it's like, they're full speed ahead.
We know it's going to be a hit. So I'll read this note from our socials, and then Todd, we can your thoughts, and then we can give it a rating. So this actually came from a gentleman named Dave CT01. He's from the Mission Log Discord, which, Todd, I was telling you, I belong to the Mission Log Discord. I've been on that great program. That's from Roddenberry Podcast, John Champion and Norman Lau. Great guys, and they run a great Discord. But Dave says there are parts I really like in the Donner cut, which we perfectly talked about, and it's the one I've seen the most, mostly because it's the version I own. But there are some bold choices, and I'm glad the release edition did not have. I much prefer the theatrical release version of Clark's reveal to Superman as Lois. I can agree. Because in the theatrical cut, she shoots Clark with a pistol with the banks, and it was pretty clunky. The theatrical version is better. Using the reverse time by flying around the world was fine in the first movie. Don't even ask me how that's possible, but doing it a second time was a wild choice and negates the whole movie, just like you said, Todd. So yes, Dave, thank you for that, and I hope you're tuning in, and we'd love to have you as a new listener. All right, Todd, final thoughts, and let's rate before we wrap up.
This is where nostalgia definitely gives you those Rosie O'Donnell colored glasses. We'll go back there, Charlie, to that. But this is a movie as a kid. I remember seeing him like, this is just cool. You've got Kryptonians beating him up. It's so neat because we got so few like big beat 'em ups on screen. But after seeing this movie, I've seen the Donner cut and this now, I'm like, it just is not good. Yeah. And
I can't believe,
it had some fun parts to it.
I can't believe how not good it is.
Exactly. So I will give this one 6 hamburgers with a chaser of orange juice out of 10.
Wow. That's
maybe lower. I don't know. I'll give 5.5 cheeseburgers.
That's fair. I think my disappointment, and maybe I more recently watched the Donner cut, and I thought, well, this is a more cohesive story, even though it's pieced together with bad takes and dailies and stuff like that. But I was just enormously disappointed watching this again. How with such promise and such accomplishment of that first film, what an enormous letdown this was. So I'm going to have to give this a 4 out of 10 hamburgers.
Yeah.
That's
was probably more realistic.
Yeah, this is functioning at about 40% of what I thought of the first film. So, all right. Well, with that, we move on next week to Man of Steel. I mean, I'm not looking at the catalog, but I think that's what it is, which is a controversial movie in its own, but we will debate the merits of that herewith when we get there. But that's our show. Folks, thanks for joining us. Todd, where do people find you out there?
They find me on Blue Sky at Todd Oxtra, at Secret Friends Unite, and also on Threads and Instagram at T Oxtra and at Secret Friends Unite.
Excellent. And I am also at many of those same socials, highlighting Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram as at the C3 TheCeeThree. I do spend most of my time hanging around our Secret Friends Unite Discord, and also, as I said, the Mission Log Discord, which is a great place for chats, both of them. But we would love to see you there. Search us out. If you don't find us, send either one of us a ping on socials, and we will add you. We would love to have you there. And that's it. That's our show. Again, thanks for joining us. But tell you as always that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
Be the hero, not the villain.
In a truck.
Kneel before Todd.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.